Hi, I'm your host, Alsen Chanamuto, and you're listening to the Kopi Kids and Kakis podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Kopi Kids and Kakis podcast. Now today's episode is long overdue but extra special. So I've got with me two friends who wear many hats. They're leaders, they're husbands, they're fathers, and brothers to many other men in Singapore as well. So first of all, I'd like to introduce to you Bryan Tan, who used to be my ex-boss, who's still my current friend, thankfully, and one of the speakers at the upcoming Men's Forum on the Richness of Manhood. And also we've got Alvin Wong, who's one of the key guys who's been putting the Men's Forum together. He's making everything click and come together. So gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Nice to meet you.
Alsen. Good to see you.
Glad to have you guys on board. Now, before we dive into the serious stuff, right? I want to start a bit light. So tell us a little bit about yourself, starting with what's your go-to kopi? Is it, Kopi O, Kopi C, or Kopi Cow? Bryan.
Well, I think I'm a Kopi Peng person. Yeah, most people know
Kopi
what to order
Peng.
for me.
Okay. And Alvin?
I'm kopi o kosong on a normal day and full kopi if I've not eaten anything.
Wow, okay, so you have two go-tos in that sense. I'm a Kopi O Kosong person as well right now. I used to be a kopi with a lot of condensed milk kind of guy.
Mm.
Now, how would your friends, describe you over a cup of kopi? Alvin.
Wow. Truth is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them will say, oh, yeah, he's a nice physician, very nice to his patients and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe more lately they'll say something about the conference. I'm the guy responsible for making others come up to the stage and talk about good masculinity and all that.
Right. How would your family describe you?
Yeah, I'm not sure how my sister will describe me, but recently she started referring her friends to me to talk about the conference as well. So I think she might
Right.
say some interesting things. At least I expected it. Good. It's been good.
Okay.
Very supportive.
How about you, Bryan? Yeah.
Well, I think my friends will, over a cup of coffee, I guess they will just say that I'm available, I'm approachable, because I always make it a point to catch up with them over a cup of coffee
Mhm.
almost every other morning. I think you know me. Every morning I'll
Yep.
go around Singapore looking for different groups of dads, men that would gather for a cup of
Yeah.
for a hot drink after sending the kids to school, or even way after sending the kids to school. Some of them have
Yeah.
kids who have graduated and move on in life, and they still gather every morning because of the camaraderie, the fellowship.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
make it a point to catch up with them every day, every week. Yeah. So and they all know what I drink, so I guess I'm predictable because it's always if Brian's coming, it's always kopi peng or kopi o peng
Right.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
With regard to my family, I
Yeah.
think I don't drink a lot of coffee at home because I'm probably the only one drinking coffee at home, and I'm seldom home. But as and when I'm
Right.
home, I unfortunately I don't have an ice maker at home, so most times I would just drink a hot coffee. So it's always kopi o, hot, at
Yeah.
home, and I think that's when I'll be reading my papers, and my kids know enough that when I'm having my coffee, I'm having my papers. That's when my attention span to all their requests and demands will be much lessened.
Yeah. I've always wondered how you find time going around the island, meeting up with men, and having coffee with them. And I
Mm,
think it's true of Alvin as well. Like both of you have spent quite a good part of your time, speaking to men, speaking for men, whether it's through conferences, mentoring, or
mm.
just over coffee. So what got you both like started on this journey of encouraging men? Maybe I'll go to Alvin, yeah.
Okay, I think I got interested when I also saw what other people did, starting with, Art of
Mm-hmm.
Manliness, Brett McKay, and after that, a whole slew of, what you can call them gurus, good gurus out there.
Right.
But even on the local scene, I mean, every trip to meet someone is usually worth it because you get to learn something. So actually, I'm selfish because the one who gains the most from all this is myself. And I consider myself
Right.
quite quite deficient, so it's really a value add for me. Putting
All right.
something together for the general public is a bonus, and meeting all the great speakers and all, it's really enriched my life. And
Right.
yeah, I'm not looking back. It's been great.
Nice. So it started off with just learning more for yourself, and then kind of getting to meet other men,
Yeah,
realizing how it's benefited them in that sense. Yeah, so
that's
great. So I look forward to hearing from all the gurus they've put together at the conference. Brian, what about you? Yeah.
Well, I have to thank Alvin because I mean he's one of the people that I get to meet over coffee, over a meal. And I guess that's how our
Yeah.
relationship started also. And I think that pretty much was how I got to meet so many wonderful dads, husbands, men. Similar to
Yeah.
Alvin, I was also kind of seeking community because it's hard for men to be sharing a lot of the challenges that we face in our different roles, whether as a son, whether as a brother,
Right.
whether as a leader, whether as a husband and also a dad. And in some cases, I've met even granddads coming together, not just to impart
Yeah.
gems of life and fatherhood, but also to kind of come together for community because not only do we gather for support, we also gather for accountability because we hold each other accountable for who we are at home, at the workplace.
Yeah.
So it's a great,
Yeah.
so it's a great time every morning just because you never know who's going to turn up and you never know what conversations are going to come out of it. So we have, and you never know what kind of great collabs come out of it, like businesses, like we
Right.
learn from each other. For our kids, we learn from each other about our marriages. We learn from each other about, parental care, business,
Yeah.
how we contribute to the
Yeah.
community, to the schools and all. So I think it's a great network and it's something I've always cherished. So that's why for the last I think it's about for the last 10 years I've just never stopped meeting men that's in the mornings.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. No, I'm just curious, right? Like, was there a particular moment or story that made you realize that men really need spaces like this to meet up, to have kopi, to talk, to share, to network? Was there a particular moment, a story that kind of comes to mind?
For me, no one particular moment. I mean, in a way, I've been preparing for this for many years, subconsciously, I guess. I mean, because I'm involved with, giving formational activities to boys, dealing with their dads, and so on, and reading, good literature on, as Bryan said, parenting, marriage, teenagers, and stuff like that. So, and along the way, and together with my work in a hospital, of course, there's plenty of interfacing with family, society, and almost any situation you can imagine has come up. So there's always a point of reflection which occurs frequently. That sort of brings you in a very natural way to seek, a learning process and to try to help people. I can give one example.
Yeah,
I had
sure.
a patient who was elderly, not super elderly, maybe late 70s. Treating him, he got better at first, then he got worse, as is often the case. And his daughter, who happens to be an adopted daughter, but basically it was as though it was their own, and it became apparent she was a single parent, and she had her own daughter. Right? So as the man was terminal, dying in the bed, they were in a single room, and so the granddaughter, the little girl, was in that room, right? And I realized that when he dies, he's like the last man in the family, right? Because he has one
Right. Yeah.
daughter who is a single parent, and she has one daughter, and she's a single parent.
Yeah.
There was one other auntie in the room. So I called the little girl. I said, "Okay, hold granddad's hand and spend as much time with him as possible because the last man in the family is going to leave." And she started showing me videos on the phone of things she did with her granddad, and that was great. At least there'll be some
Wow.
preservation of memory and some good masculine effect there. So
Yeah.
that was
Oh,
quite
that's
moving.
a really very moving, distinct memory, I think, for you as well, to see looking at that generation of women and then like the last grandpa, the man in that family left,
That's right.
and then being able to share that moment with that girl, I think is also
That's right.
such a moving thing as well.
That's
So
right.
thanks for sharing that. Brian, what about you? Like, was there a particular moment or story that made you realize, that men needed these kind of spaces, this kind of networking? Yeah.
Mm. I think for a very long time, I mean, growing up and all, it was hard for me to be, or I've never found a safe space where I could share vulnerably, be
Right.
very authentic about the kind of struggles that I have, whether with regard to manhood, whether it's with regard to work, or even in relationships within the
Yeah.
family as a husband, as a father. Of course, I
Hmm.
can't share such things openly at a workplace or even in church because
Yeah.
there's always that fear in me of being judged. Even with close
Right.
friends, I find it hard to share because I mean everybody knows my family, and I
Mm.
just didn't want people to misunderstand what
Yeah.
I'm sharing, but yet at the same time, I just needed to let it out. So when I first chanced upon a group of dads from my kids' school who happened to be gathering for breakfast at Newton Circus, which is convenient. It gives me the
Yeah.
opportunity because after dropping the kids off in school, I have that small window before I start work, right? And just having a group of people wanting
Mm.
to gather on a regular basis and bringing so much wisdom, so much empathy, so much authenticity and vulnerability into those settings helps me to just be able to share and to just capitalize on that fellowship. And I guess
Right.
it's very hard to find structured places because the rest of the day, the moment we get back to the mundane routines of the day, we just don't have time for anything else. And that's why
Right.
sometimes breakfasts are good, sometimes a late cup of tea in the
Yeah.
afternoon or in the evening with some of them would be useful. But yet, just having that regular breakfast spot just before we start was probably the best because that's the only time when all of us are able to commit to before we get lost in the
Yeah.
busyness of the day.
Thanks, Brian. So it was like you were longing for a safe space for other men to come and share with you, and you being able to share as well. And then now that you've seen how effective or how helpful it's been to you, you do it regularly with other men as well, which is fantastic. But it kind of brings me to the question, like sometimes men don't really like to talk about what they're struggling with, right? Until it's a bit too late. Why do you think that is? Why do you think men struggle to open up and share?
Well, it's well known that especially Asian men can be quite, silent and not open, or they don't know how to express themselves. I mean, of course, it's also a positive thing in
Mm.
the sense that a man is often a strong, silent type, no? But he can be dysfunctional if he doesn't speak when he's supposed to speak, or he doesn't speak enough
Right. Yeah.
at a baseline level that
Yeah.
caters to the needs of whoever it is in his family, right? So I think he has to make an effort there. Yeah,
Right.
Brian can probably tell us the other reasons.
Yeah, Brian, if you want to add on to what Alvin was saying already, yeah.
Yeah, I just add on to share my own challenges. Like there's always that fear of judgment that I'm
Yeah.
inadequate in addressing some of these things. And always, I
Yeah.
mean, even for myself, I'm guilty, right? When I find someone struggling with something, I just tell them, why don't you just man up, right? Why don't you just be a man and just suck it up
Yeah.
and move on, right? Take the hits, take the
Yeah.
punch, and just keep going, right? I mean, it sounds easy, but I
Yeah.
guess we all kind of have thresholds, and sometimes you just kind of need a bit of support. And for myself, maybe I'm just too proud to be asking for help or to be seen to be
Right.
seeking help. And yeah, so I think that's something that I had to work through over the years to realize that it is okay not to be okay, and it is
Mm.
okay for us to seek help. And
Right.
I guess I'm one of those who, or at least I think in my era, we grew up thinking that, masculinity, manhood is something in which, you just, men don't cry, you just take the hits and you just plod on.
Mm.
And yes, there might be some truth to that, but at the same time, I think masculinity also and manhood also encompasses that need to be able to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to be
Right.
able to find
Yeah.
those spaces to express that and to kind of share it with others because that makes us human and that reduces that expectation and that stress of always having to be well functioning and good and strong and everything else, and then we
Right.
just break down within ourselves and not know how to crawl back out of that dark space if we do go into it. Yeah, so I guess that's
Right.
why it's important to have good friends. It's important to have a good community of support for accountability, and it's also important to have resources and support accessible and available for anybody who needs to at whatever stage,
Right.
whatever point in their life that they need to look for it.
Right. Thanks, Bryan. Like I think a large part of how we respond as men, as fathers, is what we've learned from our own fathers. And I think as Asian men in general, our fathers were quite quiet, didn't really share their emotions. And so we've grown up kind of, trying to emulate that in some ways, and then realizing that, hey, actually, being vulnerable, sharing is actually helping me as well. I'm on that journey of discovering, what it's like to be a vulnerable dad, what it's like to be a vulnerable man, to share with other men as well. And I guess being a man today looks quite different from what it was like for our fathers in a way. So what do you think, are the biggest challenges men face right now, especially the younger dads or young fathers in the working world? Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot of pressure. Parenting is, maybe even more pressurizing today, right? Because we've set such a high bar.
Right.
You add on the finances, you add on the stresses on time, expectation, and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the man is not able to carve out space for him to be reasonably confident and not have to keep up with the Joneses, or to worry about what others will say, or to have the whatever KPI set for himself, right? The standard of living, then he may succumb to the pressure and find it hard to be himself. Yeah.
So pressure, keeping up with the Joneses, kind of keeps them, in that space, feeling a lot of pressure in their life. Bryan, what do you think about that, or do you have other views on that?
I think one of the challenges that we have is really the lack of role models for men in how we individuate as a man, as a husband, and as a father, because our world has changed, and the accessibility to such role modeling has become even more challenging because of all the distractions that we face today, right? We always say there's no time for this, there's no time for that. Half the time we're all stuck in the digital world, in our devices for very good reasons. And then even for myself, when my kids look at me, they find that I'm either on my phone, I'm on my laptop, having a conversation with somebody, and then and they're trying to fight for my attention, even with a newspaper and a coffee, right? Yeah. I think for me growing up, I've always had access to my grandfather. I have access to my dad, even though he travels so much and he's away at work. But whenever he's around, I have his attention, because there just wasn't anything else, right? I mean, I grew up in an era where having a black and white TV was suddenly a big thing in the house. I mean, first it was Rediffusion radio, right? That captured our attention, and then everybody had.
You're
to
showing
fight
your
for it.
age already.
Yes, Rediffusion radio, and then suddenly the black and white TV came, then the color TV came, then suddenly the first computer came, and then handphones, and then next thing I know, today my kids are so adept in that digital world. It's like, not only is it easy for them to come into my world, not for me to go into their world today, it's even tougher because they're also drawn into that. And if I don't set the blueprints of what it means to be, say, a son, a man, a husband to my daughter and my son, and even as a father, I think it's going to be harder for them to understand what it's going to take to maintain a good relationship in a marriage, or to even be present as parents, because today one of my fears also is, am I imparting the right values? Am I modeling it correctly, despite all the other challenges and that I have at work, in the community, and everywhere else?
From what I hear you say, it's like men don't have a role model that shows them how to transit from, being a young person, a teenager, young man, to a working adult, all the different stages. And like you mentioned, you've been quite blessed, and your dad has been around, your grandpa's around, you've been able to learn from them. For example, like for me, my dad passed away when I was 17. So when I went into my young adulthood, I was a bit lost because all I had was my mum, and so I had to figure things out along the way. Even though I had two older brothers, it's different, right? Brothers and father, the role's a bit different. And I think there's a lot of young men out there who are trying to figure things out. Maybe they don't have role models, and I think role modeling is really quite important. And I guess that kind of brings us to the forum itself. Like Alvin, you've been running. I think this is the second year of the men's forum, right?
Second time, yeah.
And it's about the richness of manhood, and I love that phrase. Like, so why did you come up with that phrase? And was role modeling one of the drivers of this conference that you put together as well?
Yeah, the idea of the conference was also to serve as a platform for men to learn from each other. Right? I think it's one of the tenets of men's groups out there, men's fraternity, learning how to be better men from men, right? Although it's never meant to be exclusive, of course, we also learn from women. But when we see another person who is in a similar line or with similar situation, and then we identify, right? We may not be exactly the same as him, but at least it gives us a heads up as to what we could be. So the advantage of building a community which is visible and real, and nowadays there are so many ways to connect. The conference is basically a platform, right? It's meant to help those who have not plugged into anything to have the opportunity to plug in whatever way they want. And later they do their own thing, they develop their own path, and that's great.
I like how you said, to be better men, and you didn't use the word perfect man, because there's no such thing as a perfect man, right? And we are going to make mistakes as men along the way, and sometimes it's good to learn from others, and when we make a mistake, we learn from others, and we can also learn from other people's mistakes too. And, so how do we, as men, right, embrace growth without feeling guilty, especially when we fall short, whether it's in our marriages, whether it's in our homes, whether it's in our work? How do we embrace this growth kind of mindset? Yeah.
I was just going to bring up something which Lim Seong Guan told us when we had coffee with him last December. It was Christmas Eve, actually. We were trying to get him to do a fireside, which finally he did. And Mr. Lim told us, we look at the way fathers differ from moms, right? If the child runs and he falls down, gets an abrasion, the father will, address the wound and then say, okay, son, carry on running, right? Whereas the mom would have address the wound and then say, stop running. So it is a good masculine trait to not be discouraged even when we get bruised or we leave bits of skin behind, right? Because we try and we keep going.
Yeah. Fathers are the ones that are willing to let their kids fall down, pick themselves up, and go again. And moms can be a bit more protective in the sense where if they've hurt themselves, they try and keep them. It's a bit like swimming as well. Like with my kids, kids like to go swimming with me because I let them try things, go underwater, breathe underwater. I totally agree with you with that. But Bryan, what about yourself? We're talking about growth, right, and learning from mistakes. What's your take on that?
I think the growth mindset is important. And one of the things that I think we men need to realize is the span of our influence that we all hold. And we need to be good stewards of that influence. Because if we are in a position or in a role, say as a husband, we got to kind of steward the quality of our marriage, the relationship that we have with our spouses. When we become parents, dads specifically, we kind of need to be able to steward the influence that we have within our own family. And because all of us are plugged into so many different things in the community, at the workplaces and all, we kind of continue to need to be able to steward that because we have a great impact on so many other people, on their families, on the social fabric, and we kind of need to know. And that also kind of brings forth the other thing about, how then do we become accountable for what we steward? Certainly, Bryan left to my own devices is not going to be able to do that because I have my blind sides. I need my wingman to tell me, what's at my 6 o'clock. And I think that's where being part of a community provides that regulation so that, we know our boundaries, we know the extent of what we do. And sometimes it's humbling for us to be called out for something that we're not doing so right. And to be afforded the opportunity to make it right with different perspectives of from others who have gone through the same journey of how we could do better in the role as a steward. And it also gives us an opportunity
Yeah.
to kind of give back, right? To kind of share those things so that hopefully somebody else doesn't have to go through the same dark paths that we were led down
Right.
at one point in our lives and all.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Alvin mentioned risk taking, learning from mistakes, and then fathers being more of that risk taker. Whereas you talk about stewardship, being accountable to other men as well. And I guess, in a way, it kind of covers everything, right? We are taking risks, but at the same time, we also have to be accountable to people. We got to be careful with the resources that we have, how we're looking after our families, our marriages. So I'm guessing that will be covered throughout the conference as well in the different ways, different talks that you can attend, the different sessions. If there's one thing that men, you hope that men who attends the conference will take away with them, what is that one thing? Alvin, maybe I'll start with you. Yeah.
Well, that every man has an opportunity and it's in the present, and he just has to reach out and grab it. And even if he has fallen along the way, there's one psychologist who said we always fall forward. Even a fall is a motion forward, that you have opportunity to reestablish yourself, to learn, to grow, right, to mature.
Right.
So I think at the last conference, the best feedback that I got was from probably a young man. He said, after the conference, I decided to, there was this girl that I was admiring, and I was wondering whether, and finally I asked her out. And the great was then
Wow.
he's taking opportunity, right? He's taking the risk of being
Yeah.
rejected. But if you don't ask,
Right.
you won't know. So seize the day, kap diem,
And
right?
he fell forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what
Kap diem,
was the
yeah.
I hope it turned out well.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love that story. I think that will probably push a lot of single men to attend the conference too. But yeah, Bryan, how about yourself?
Well, I think many of us growing up as boys, as men and all, we've come to realize that all of us need to really develop our leadership because we are leading in one form or another across
Right.
across our individuation, right? As we grow, and we also kind of know the maxim that the world holds today, right? That leadership can be lonely and all, which is a myth that I think many of us need to start busting, because it is not
Right.
a journey in which we are totally alone. There are resources, there is community, there is a mentor out there, a coach, or someone willing to be willing to journey life with us together. And I think that's what I've benefited from the many men's group that I've met, the active fathering movement that we have in Singapore. That's for life. I am a beneficiary of it, and I think what they've done for me is just phenomenal, and my family too. So I guess one parting word or one parting phrase I have for every man who's at the conference, every father who's at the conference, that really on this journey of discovering manhood and even enjoying fatherhood, on this journey you will never walk alone, right?
Yeah. Go Liverpool. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
No, every episode of Kopi Kids and Kakis, there'll be someone who
There's
mentioned the phrase
something-
"You'll never walk alone."
selling his
Yeah,
teeth.
and he will come back to Liverpool. So yeah, thanks, Bryan, for bringing it back there. But I think at the end of the day, like what we want to, I guess, do at the conference is also build that community, like Bryan's mentioning, a community that would support one another, a community that's willing to open up and share, but also network in a sense where there may be people who are in leadership who feel like they're alone, but actually they don't have to be alone, like what Bryan is saying, right? We always hear this mantra, leadership is lonely, but actually I don't think that's true. Like you mentioned, if we partner with people, we learn from one another, we have that networking going on, I think it can be quite a fruitful journey where we learn from one another. So thanks, Bryan, for sharing that as well. If there's one thing, right, let's say your son attends men's conference in his young 20s, what is that one, I guess, lesson you want them to take back with them? Yeah, I know I'm throwing you guys on the spot, but yeah.
Well, in the last, the first conference we had, there were 5 sessions in the young men's track. The one that I really wanted to make an impact was entitled "A Young Man's Got to Do What a Young Man's Got to Do." Of course, you know the origin of that phrase, right? It's It's taken from
All right. Yeah.
from the movies, right, from the John Wayne era. And we had a visiting professor at that time who came from Chile, who had an amazing story of how he managed to go for a difficult career path because he felt called. Right? He was a medical obstetrician dealing with high-risk pregnancies. And at the same time, he was asked to help start a university. At the same time, he was getting married, and he needed to have 2 jobs to hold the fort and things like that.
Mm.
And the idea was to basically tell young men, well, you got to get on in life. You got to get on with life.
Right.
Right? I mean, nowadays we have, I think it's a fairly new phenomenon. Down the road from where I live, on Balestier Road, there is one of these hostels. It's called the Gap Year Hostel. So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried when I see things like that. So let's help young men to get on with life and not to be afraid of it, right?
Yeah. I think the gap year is a phenomenon that we see a lot of young university students doing and taking a break and then before they go into work and things like that. So I can see where you get that, fear from in a sense. But yeah, thanks. So you want them to just get on with it. I think you were saying the John Wayne mantra of a young man's got to do what a young man's got to do. So I think that is a great phrase to remember as well. Bryan, what about yourself?
Something that I continue to tell my kids all the time that, despite whatever happens in life, despite the challenges that they might face, despite whatever they may be facing with me and all, I will continue to, reassure them of my commitment to being with them, to supporting them in whatever they want to be doing. And I have to come back to this again because I'm always telling my kids that, you never walk alone, right? Daddy's always here, mommy's always here, and we're just going to be with you henceforth as long as we can, as long as you allow us to.
Yeah, I think that you guys are a good balance in the sense that, Alvin says you got to do what you got to do as a young man. You got to figure things out. Bryan, you're the coming from the Center for Fathering. You're bringing the parental. I'm gonna support you. I'm gonna be there as you do what you got to do. And I think that's a great balance to have, right? They have to try, but I think they need that sense of
Guidance.
support from the parents as well. So yeah, great way to put it, both of you. We kind of coming towards the end of our podcast. I usually end off my podcast with this thing called the brew of the day. So the brew of the day is where I give you a quote, and from that quote, you tell me what are your thoughts about it, and what you think, whether it applies or whether you don't agree with it, for example, or do you relate to it. So the quote today I have is from Amos Bronson Alcott, who's a teacher and a philosopher. He says, "First, find the man in yourself if you will inspire manliness in others." So first, find the man in yourself if you will inspire manliness in others. All right. So what do you guys think about that quote?
Well, certainly it's similar to, I can't remember who said the physician heal thyself, right? Or is it from the scriptures? And certainly, important thing is to reflect on oneself. But even if one realizes that one is deficient, he can still begin the journey with others' help. He can still do something, knowing that he will be the first person to register for that thing, right? And I think and that's also learning from others how they do it. They didn't do things because they were perfect at it. They may have had some innate skill to get it going, but finally they would have grown with that venture. And I think manhood, manliness, fatherhood, whichever aspect, is a great way for us.
Thanks, Alvin. Bryan?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm just I have two tracks of thoughts with regard to that statement. So I think,
Okay.
firstly, I guess you know me. I'm not the kind. I guess also you know me. Having been colleagues for some time, we don't wait for resources before we start doing something. So in that sense, even if I've not found manliness for myself, nothing is stopping me from wanting to inspire someone towards trying to seek for manliness. And that's probably something that we could be doing together, because since I'm searching for it myself, right? So just bringing people along the journey and building that community for support and accountability in pursuit of what we think would be important. The other thing that I think that I started thinking about is really my identity. So
Mhm.
who am I? I mean, who's Bryan, right? So
Yeah.
and how does manliness play into my identity? So rather than get caught with the notion of manliness or manhood should look like, and try to frame myself to it, who am I really, and
Mhm.
what aspects of me, what traits, what characteristics are considered manly or part of manliness. And that's where I think I would want to focus on, because I think there's so many metrics for us to fulfill, so many expectations for us to fulfill in this world, and
Mhm.
not getting to
Right.
those worldview definitions according to worldview today puts
Right.
people in all sorts of um, what's the word, shame, guilt, and
Mm.
and
Right.
and yeah, and disappointments, frustrations. And I think we've had enough of that. Let us just celebrate who we are
Mm.
as individuals, what our identity
Right.
are, and what aspects
Mm.
can be defined as manliness, and just do that, because we are not going to be able to fit every metric in which
Right.
manliness or manhood is going to be defined, but that doesn't make us any less manly. I don't know if this makes sense,
Right.
but yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I just felt that, like, I didn't want to be living up to a certain
Right.
expectation, but yet I want to be
Yeah.
celebrated as who I am. I want to be secure in my identity, and
Right.
aspects of it that I think should be passed on. For example, aspects of my manhood or manliness that can be passed
Mm.
on to my
Mm. Yeah.
sons should be transferred in that same manner, so that they grow up to be fine young men, good
Right.
leaders, good employers, good husbands, good fathers, grandfathers, even if I can.
Yeah.
And then aspects of my
Yeah.
manhood or manliness that can be transferred to my daughter is really in the hope that she finds a man with similar traits who will treat her well, treat her the way she deserves to be treated from that
Right.
aspect. Yeah.
Wow. I think, like, if I want to summarize what you said, the first part you mentioned, you don't have to be a finished product in order for you to then go and talk to other men and encourage other men, right? You don't have to be that perfect man to do it. You on your journey of discovery, you can already encourage other men and learn and grow together. I think that's the first part you mentioned. I think
Yep.
the second one was about there's no KPI for manliness. You don't have to tick all the boxes before people can say you're a man, right? Or you're manly. But every man is unique in a sense. But there are certain non-negotiable values and things that we want to pass down, gentlemanly values, character values that we want to pass down as a man. But there's no we can't just say, oh, you don't tick all the boxes, therefore you're not man as well. I think that that's something that you mentioned as well. So there's no KPI, and every man is unique, and we can all build from there and learn from each other in that sense, right? So I hope I summarized it pretty well. So Bryan and Alvin, thank you so much for being here with me on my Kopi Kids and Kakis podcast. Always good to have meaningful, manly conversations over kopi. I wish we were on site drinking a cup of kopi, but we don't. And for our listeners, remember, you don't have to be perfect to encourage someone else in your life. So let's keep learning, laughing, and leading with heart. And to those of you who have tuned in and wondering what conference are we talking about, it's the Men's Form Conference that's coming up on 1st of November. You want to find out more, we'll attach it in our web pages, and I'll send out some of the information as well. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this morning.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you,
Thank you.
Alsen.
Very nice.
Enjoyed it.
See you
Enjoy
guys
your
soon.
brew of the day.
That's great. We hope you had a good time and picked up something useful for your parenting journey. If you enjoyed this chat, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a fellow parent, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep the kopi strong, the kids happy, and the kakis close. See you soon.